Welcome to BFM Spotlight. I'm joined by Roy Evans, former Liverpool manager. Roy, first up on something fairly current. Andre Villas-Boas was let go of really recently, with many a discussion being focused about the relationship between managers and owners now and how that kind of affects the job. How do you think things have changed since you were a manager?
It's still the results industry. I mean, you've got to win games, and certainly when you play now for your managers likes of Chelsea, that the owners expect you to take the team forward. And unfortunately for the manager, he's been under pressure from the British press from more or less the first time he came into the Chelsea dressing room, and it builds and builds. And if you don't get results, you end up with the sack. You're not given time, unfortunately, because everybody wants to be successful, but there's only one team who can win the league.
Do you think the influx of owners who kind of look at clubs as profit-making industries as opposed to footballing clubs, does that also affect how managers have to behave?
Well, I think so, because whereas years ago it used to be a board of directors and you'd sort of sit before them once a month and talk it through. Now they have the right to just come in and sack you as whatever. Money has spoiled the game in many ways, as it tends to do. I mean, there's obviously players get paid probably far too much money in different things, but modern times move on and you have to move with them. I always like to think that we had the best times in football in terms of playing the game. We didn't earn as much money as many of the people today, but they were fairer times and they were more honest times, if you like, and you were given a bit more of a chance.
Less politically fraught times, so let's say.
That's for sure.
And on the subject of Liverpool managers, some would also say that the appointing of Kenny Dalglish is kind of like a return to the cycle as opposed to moving forward. What's your take on that?
Well, we had a little spell under Roy Hodgson, which things didn't go so well.
Right.
To be fair to Roy Hodgson, who's gone on to do well at West Brom.
And he did well before as well.
Yeah, and I think when he came to Liverpool, he was just the wrong man. Sometimes the expectation of being a manager of a club like Liverpool is immense. And of course, with Kenny sat in the stands, that things weren't easy for Roy. But then for Kenny to take the job, he gave us a great lift for a while. We won our first trophy for a while as well, which was last week in the Carling Cup. But we're still not challenging for the Premiership, which is obviously the most important. We've drawn 8 games at home, and if you lose them sort of points, you can't expect to be in the top 4, and that's of course what everybody is looking for today.
And as you say, it's been quite a while since Liverpool has been consistently winning cups kind of across the board. How do you feel about Liverpool's glory days kind of seeming to be in the past?
Well, it's always going to happen. You're always going to have a spell somewhere where you don't win as many things, especially when you've been as successful as Liverpool in the late 60s, 70s and 80s. Things obviously since then have been different. We've not won the Premiership yet, which is unfortunate. We're waiting for our first championship, if you like, and we've been close. Rafa got, I think, to second place and
won the Champions League, in the process.
And and you have to accept that we've been successful in some of the cups as well. But the big target though is to win the Premiership, because we've never done it.
Sure, because there's this whole 18-19 nonsense happening, and that's kind of focused on how Manchester United's having the boom period now, I suppose.
Well, because you're a Manchester United supporter, so
which I told you,
and you're quite happy with it because it's 18-17 now, and I love the sort of banter between the fans as long as it stays in the right place.
Sure.
It doesn't go any further. I think it's great. I mean, and I have to have great respect for Man United, what they've achieved over the last years. I mean, we could have been lucky. Alex Ferguson could have got the sack 15 years ago when he nearly did. But unfortunately never, and I tell him that to his face. But he's done great things, and the team have played really well. It's for Liverpool now to up their game and make sure we can challenge. Certainly not this year, but maybe next year.
Taking a little bit of a look at your career progression, you started off as a player, and then you moved on pretty early into becoming a coach and a manager. What was it like making that sort of transition?
It's difficult for me because I was offered a job at the age of 26 when you think you're in your prime, but in all honesty, I was only getting sort of 3 games a season when somebody was injured or different things. So in terms of my footballing thing, it wasn't going so well. But to be offered a job as a coach with the reserve team was something different, and it wasn't something I wanted to do. But I was advised, and sort of people like Joe Fagan, Tommy Smith, Why didn't you try it? And it turned out to be very beneficial to my career. And as I say, I went on fortunately to do every job in the club really, as a player and then a sort of reserve team trainer and physio and different things. So I went right through everybody's job, which is a nice way to learn your trade.
And it's also, of course, still with the club you love, so that works out.
Well, that's the most fantastic thing, yeah.
And now you're a pundit. And pundits, always seem to be able to make all sorts of reasonable statements about, and commentary on the game and the tactics. How does your experience now as a pundit, watching the game and making commentary on it, sort of lend perspective to your years as a manager and a coach?
Well, obviously you learn things throughout your career. I had 35 great years at Liverpool, and you learn a lot of things, but football is only about opinions, and it's your opinion is no worse or better than mine. Mine might be a little bit more experienced, if you like, but it doesn't make it right. Nobody knows everything about football, even the top managers, the top players. Football is about opinions, and fans normally make their opinions after the game, whereas managers have to make them before. So it's nice being a pundit sometimes, because I say you've seen the game, you're only telling people what you've seen and what you think they should have done. Sometimes you have to be critical of your own team, but it keeps you in the game. It keeps you in touch with the club that you love.
And with so many decades of your life, devoted to Liverpool, it's years and years. How does it feel to watch now that you're no longer involved with the coaching or management staff?
Well, yeah, I mean, again, when I left, it was slightly bitter, and to be honest, for 6 or 8 months, you are bitter, but so you turn your life around and say, look, this is my team, I want to support them, and that's what you do now. You become a supporter again, through thick and through thin, and we won our first cup last week.
The League Cup, yes.
The League Cup, which is, we only just scraped through against Cardiff, but again, we've got to improve. I mean, there's a realisation at the club at the moment that obviously being in 7th position and I think we're 26 points behind the leaders, that we've no chance really, I don't think, of making the top 4. So we've got to improve, and I think everybody at the club realises that, and they'll strive towards that.
Sure, because this is the first season in a while that it's kind of been opened up to a 4-horse race as opposed to 2, and I think everybody wants to be in that little space.
Well, it's only 2 really, isn't it? It's only
at the moment, yes.
The day,
yeah.
And you said very happily. Yeah, a lot of the other clubs, to be fair, Chelsea, Tottenham, Arsenal, Liverpool, Newcastle, none of them really have taken command of their positions, and they've put themselves. Arsenal over the last 4 or 5 weeks have put themselves in a better position. Strangely, yeah. They've started to win games that they haven't looked like winning, even against Liverpool over the weekend.
Even Arsene Wenger's looking a little happier now, which is nice to see.
It's nice to see him smile occasionally, yeah. But it's a tough job.
It is. And if you had that tough job right now, if you were a Liverpool manager at this moment, what would be the one executive decision you'd like to make?
Well, I'd like to buy an out-and-out goal scorer. I'd like to find the new Robbie Fowler, who can score goals. Because
some would say Fernando Torres was it.
But he wasn't exactly a Robbie Fowler in terms of goals. We play some great football, we make a lot of chances, but we've only scored 30 goals, and you're never going to be challenging for the top unless we score more, and that's been the downfall this season.
I think someone pointed out that Robin van Persie scored 25, 26 goals this season, and Liverpool have scored 30.
Only scored 30, yeah.
Yeah, so
and that's the difference between we've hit the post a record number of times, we've made a record amount of chances, but if you don't put them in the back of the net, you don't win games, and that's where we need to improve.
Okay, and my final question. As a total Liverpool man, which this interview has made abundantly clear, who are you tipping to win the league this year, United or City?
Ooh,
yes.
Putting the pressure there.
It's a loaded question.
This is the time of the season that Man United come into their own, because they have great experience of winning them. When you've won things, it always stands high for you, so you know what to expect. We know Alex Ferguson's got the credentials to win it. But I think City have great strength in their team. I think the only problem City have is they've got some disruptive players who keep causing them problems. Good players, but disruptive players. Well, yeah, and Tevez hasn't done them any favours.
Yeah.
And if they do manage to hang on, then you have to give them great credit. But it's always tough to gamble against Man United.
So, final answer, Man United?
No, City.